Good morning, Who Dat Nation, and happy week 11 to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well on this, I can't even say early November morning anymore. We're creeping towards mid-November very quickly. And on that note, I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to your Week 11 Bayou Blitz pregame show. I'd like to welcome my friend, my partner in crime, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy week 11.
I can't believe it's already week 11. I mean, we've talked about it before, though. Like, it does seem, in a sense, like we've lived two different seasons, right? Like, the first two or 3 weeks was 1 year, and now it feels like a completely different. And now post NSL, we might be in 3 different seasons in one season, and that's kind of what it feels like. So, no, it's good to be here. Hopefully, the Saints are looking ahead, looking forward, trying to ride some momentum of victory, make it 2 in a row. And hopefully I'm not laughing at them today like I was laughing at Sal Valcano last night. Shout out to the Impractical Jokers on his new comedy tour, and was here in Charlotte last night. So let's go ahead and jump into this, Bob. We'll remind everybody it's the most wonderful time of the year, right? Because football is back. It's here to stay until February. And you guys already know that Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. All you got to think, like today, will Alvin Kamara rack up higher than 16 and a half carries? Or will Jameis Winston get lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns in his quote-unquote revenge game as he travels back to New Orleans for the first time as a starting quarterback since he was a starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints? Remember, you can cook up entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all football season long. Also, remember Red Zone Rush, a new game that you won't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes and left for no. It sounds like some dating apps, I know, but it's as simple as that.
We wouldn't know anything about that.
I don't. I know you don't. We did at one point. Well, maybe I did. Bob, I'm not aging you. I'm not dating you, am I? I'm just kidding. But plus, if you play Red Zone Rush, your entry will automatically be boosted, and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. That's exciting. So, again, Underdog available in 33 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Bob and I have had some luck lately, and we're going to see if it continues to ride out. I think the positive thing to take away from this, Bob, is even though last week was not a victory, there were opportunities for victory, right? I think a lot of times when you're playing the projections, you know whether you're not your projection and what you thought it was going to be is good or not based off of opportunities, right? Like last week, Younghoe Koo missed 3 field goals. We just needed 1 more to go in. I think we were on the right track. I think we're going to be on the right track again today. So before we give you the picks, go ahead, download the app, use code BayouBlitz to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the app, use our code BayouBlitz to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly, and you're going to get a free pick today. So you should go ahead and download the app. You got to be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona. Got to be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. And finally, in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. Bob, you ready for these picks? I was impressed. I got through that a little bit better than I thought I was going to.
Yep. Let's see who we can throw the Rose curse on today.
Okay, perfect. Well, they removed one of them that I just had aside. So we'll start with these two. These, I think, are good ones to at least start at. And so we'll start with Jameis Winston because we made the joke a few weeks ago. We were just going to throw the bag for Jameis Winston to get whatever the higher was in passing yards. His higher lower passing yards projection is 243.5.
Listen, the Saints come into this game 29th against the pass. And, they faced a couple good quarterbacks. Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes come to mind. But they've also given up a lot of receiving numbers to mediocre receivers, unknown receivers, still developing receivers. I wrote about Jameis Winston in my pregame piece on the Saints News Network this morning. I listed Jameis as my one X factor play as far as player goes, and I mentioned it as the Jekyll and Hyde of Jameis Winston. There's no team aside from maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers more familiar with the Jekyll and Hyde of Jameis Winston, more so than the New Orleans Saints. 9 matchups against him as a Buccaneers quarterback, and then the last 4 years of him in the Saints locker room. Jameis has always been the type of player that can rip a defense apart, but he's also always been the type of player that can cost his team victories with crippling, just mind-numbing mistakes. And oftentimes you see both Jameis Winstons in the course of the same game, sometimes the same quarter. There's no reason to expect otherwise today, but the Saints give up a lot of passing yards. One of the good things that you can say about this New Orleans defense is that they'll more often than not they've been getting turnovers, especially interceptions where their 12 picks is among a league high. So I do think that they'll get a couple turnovers from Jameis today. Obviously, the key to winning is taking advantage of those turnovers and making sure you force him into multiple mistakes. But I also think Jameis is going to get his passing yards. New Orleans has to, Cleveland needs to run the ball, but New Orleans knows that, and they've been an absolute disaster against the run too. But I think the Saints are going to come out geeked to stop the run and try to force Jameis to beat them on the strength of his arm and decision making. But I still think Winston's going to get his yards. What's our higher, lower? 243, 243 and a half.
Now it's 244 and a half.
244 and a half. I still got to go higher here. I know Kool-Aid McKinstry's playing today. Will Harris is still back in the lineup, and Alontae Taylor's been great this season. But I think Cleveland is going to be able to move the ball through the air. Like I said, the key is forcing Jameis into multiple mistakes. I don't expect the Saints to absolutely stuff Cleveland's lowly ranked offense, but I do think that they'll get some mistakes today. But yeah, I'm thrashing the higher on that Jameis 244.
I am too. I also think he's got something to prove. I don't think it was a super nasty breakup by any means. But I don't think it ended the way that Jameis wanted it to. Obviously, I think there'd be a little bit more bad blood if DA was still on the other sideline. Yeah. But since it's not, but I still expect Jameis to come into the Dome and show out. Here's another fun one. At least I think it's fun. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Higher than half a receiving yard in the first quarter. Essentially, will Scantling get a receiving yard in the first quarter of today's game? Well, there's no lower option, so it's either we take it or we don't.
Man, I don't see how you can trust any of the Saints receiving core because the 3 most talented players at the position are on injured reserve. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Bub Means was coming along fairly nicely. And I know Cedric Wilson is back today, but you saw an instant rapport between Derek Carr and MVS last week. Now, Scantling, as you pointed out, in our post-game show, he didn't have, I don't even think he got targeted, but I know he didn't have any receptions in the second half of last week's win over Atlanta. But the 3 catches that he had in the first half were huge. 2 touchdowns and then 1 to set up his second touchdown. I think the Saints are going to really focus on trying to run the football today, and Cleveland has an outstanding secondary. But outside of Alvin Kamara, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is the most reliable pass catcher that Derek Carr has to target. So I do think that it wouldn't be surprising if they took a shot with him early on. But I do think that Valdes-Scantling is going to get even more than the 3 targets that he received last week against the Falcons. To do that, you got to get him involved early. I think not only the first quarter, probably the first Saints offensive drive, MVS is going to have at least 1 catch.
She'll take the higher. All right. I like these this week. I actually feel pretty confident about. And this is the last one. You just mentioned running the football. The Saints are probably going to focus on that today. Alvin Kamara, there's no lower option again, so we either take it or we don't. Higher than 16.5 rushing attempts. He's done that in each of the last 2 weeks, Bob, with 17 last week, and then he had, I think, 29 the week before. Do we like the higher for Alvin to get 17 rushing attempts?
I don't like it as much as our previous two picks, with Winston and MVS. But again, what else do the Saints have offensively? I do expect more Taysom Hill today. We just mentioned Valdez-Scantling and Cedric Wilson is back. New Orleans needs. I think New Orleans is going to try to attack Cleveland with the play action because the Browns defense has been extremely vulnerable, in that area. But to be able to make plays with play action, you got to run the football, right? Jamal Williams is out again, and we'll get into the inactives in a minute. Meaning Jordan Mims is going to be his backup. Again, I expect to see a lot of Taysom, but forget the fact that the Saints offense revolves around Alvin Kamara. The Saints offense basically is Alvin Kamara. So I'd feel a lot better if it was 16.5 touches. But I think I feel pretty secure that Alvin, unless the Saints fall way behind early, feel pretty secure that Alvin is going to, get anywhere between 15 and 20 rushes. Obviously if he gets two more than 15, that gives us our higher. So yeah, I got to go with that.
All right. Those are our 3 for the week. If we flex it, 2 correct gets us 1.2 times our money. All 3 would be 3.39 times our money. And if we're feeling dangerous and we want to go 3 for 3, it would 6.78 times our money. So, Bob, how are you feeling? I actually like these ones, but with our luck, I think flexing is probably the
yeah. Well, again, I got to mention the Rose curse. So
yeah. So we'll flex it. I'll go ahead as Bob reads you guys the inactive list here in a moment. I'll go ahead and tweet that out for everybody so you guys know what's going on. We have our entry for the day. Flexing it, again, it's MVS for higher than half a first quarter receiving yard, Kamara higher than 16.5 rushing attempts, and Jameis Winston higher. It went down, so it's good for us, I guess, 242.5 passing yards. Again, we'll tweet that out here in a moment. Bob, while I do that, let's get to the inactives.
Yes, your New Orleans Saints inactive list today. On offense, Lucas Patrick, starting guard, out. Jamal Williams, as we just mentioned a moment ago, running back, out. Bit of a surprise to me, Mason Tipton, who has been starting at wide receiver because of the injury issues. He is inactive today. On the defensive side for the Saints, defensive tackle Christian Boyd out, linebacker Jalen Ford, who has not been active. He's been on the active roster every single game, but he has not been active for a single contest. But Jalen Ford is out. Safety Millard Bradford is out. Spencer Rattler is designated as the emergency third quarterback today. That's the bad news. If you consider those moves bad news. The good news is Pete Werner, who was listed as a game-time decision, he is in uniform and will be starting today for the New Orleans Saints. And even better news, for the first time since the third play of a Week 3 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, Mr. Eric McCoy will be starting at center for the New Orleans Saints. If you haven't followed my work this week, first of all, I need you to so I can feed my family. But second of all, I wrote about Eric McCoy's return and what that means to the Saints offense. He's missed 7 full games and all but 3 plays of an 8th this year. So let's call it 8 games, that McCoy has been out this year. Eric played every game last year, but missed 5 back in 2022. So I did a statistical comparison, 2022 and this year, 2024, 14 games with Eric McCoy and 13 games without. The 14 games that Eric McCoy has played, the Saints have averaged 147 yards on the ground, 4.7 per rush, have given up a shade less than 2 sacks per game and have averaged 25.4 points. In the 13 games without Eric McCoy, New Orleans has averaged only 88 rushing yards per game, 3.7 per rush, almost 3 sacks per game, a little over 2.5, and 15.5 points per contest. So, and obviously other players have contributed, to that statistic differential. We know about, Taysom Hill's injury issues, the injury issues to the receiving core, and Derek Carr being out. But I think it's safe to say that having a healthy Eric McCoy is absolutely crucial to the success of this offense.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's going to show not just in the running game. And I think a lot of people automatically focus towards that, right? They're like, well, Eric McCoy's back. It's going to help the running game. It's going to help the passing game. It's going to help pass protection. It's going to help very simple things that get kind of lost and unnoticed. And what I mean by that is Eric McCoy, at least based off the tape that I've watched, and Bob, you watch a lot more than I do, and maybe more than anybody I know. So you can either tell me I'm right or quietly tell me I'm wrong. But Eric McCoy pulls from the center position towards the highest in the league. One of the most active centers when it comes to movement after the ball is snapped. That's hard to replicate with any center because A, you got to have a guy that's athletic enough to do that. B, you got to have a guy that understands the playbook and knows the playbook inside and out to where you feel comfortable with those things happening. And then third, you just don't necessarily feel comfortable doing that when you're on your 5th center of the year, right? So having somebody back that can do those things sounds simple. You might be thinking, Brendan, what does that mean? But being able to literally shift your line one way or another, or just have a crackback block, which I know you can't technically do anymore, but to be able to have a pulling guard or a pulling center that's really going to, in the words of Lombardi, seal here, and then run up, like that's huge. And the Saints have really missed that in the running game. But also pay attention to the little things like that in the passing game, especially off play action, because the Saints do such a good job and have for the last 15 years selling play action, not just because the quarterback, not just because the running back, but because of how well the movement of the offensive line sells that. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be huge in the passing game. And then just generally, your center is the quarterback of your offensive line, quote unquote. But especially a guy like Eric McCoy, who has the most experience of anybody on that offensive line, he's going to kind of be able to call out some things, make the guys do some things without Derek Carr having to, which makes Derek Carr's job easier. Carr's not having to make certain calls and certain checks because he can trust his center to do so. And that's something the Saints have missed a lot this year. So they sound minute, but in actuality, those are huge factors to some of the lack of success the Saints offense has found over the last 5, 6, 7 weeks. I'm not going to say that magically this team starts putting up 40 again.
Right.
But you're going to see some things flow a little bit better. Maybe not necessarily the first game McCoy's back, but Lord willing, if he stays healthy the rest of the year, you're going to start seeing that offense kind of tick a different way in the coming weeks. I think it's the biggest and best news the Saints could have gotten for the rest of the year to know that that's back. And also you get kind of a better read on things, right? When you have an offensive captain back, when you have a guy who quarterbacks your offensive line. Because, look, whether you guys think that this season's still in play or not, statistically it's still in play. Actuality, it's really not in play for them to make the postseason. What happens now, especially with the interim head coach, well, everybody's under a little bit more of a microscope going, well, do we want this guy moving forward? Is this guy going to be a cornerstone piece, or is this guy going to be a role piece for us? When you have kind of a makeshift offensive line, makeshift wide receiver room, Alvin Kamara and whoever else wants to play running back, it's really hard to get a good grasp on, okay, look, this is what this team could look like if we had this, this, and this, right? Because you don't have all the chess pieces there to play. You're like playing with a ton of pawns and like and your king, like that's hard to do. But as you slowly get your knights back, right, and you're able to drop some of those pawns and replace them with key pieces to the chessboard, you get a better read of how can we play this not just this season, but moving forward. So the more healthy the Saints get, the better the offense is going to look, the more it's going to tick, and the more key decisions for personnel moving forward are going to be able to be made.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you mentioned one thing about McCoy that I think is a real underrated aspect of his return and for the Saints offense in general. His awareness in the center, at the center spot. Since he's been out, and it hasn't helped that the Saints have had to use 3-4 different centers either. But since he's been out, opponents have attacked that interior offensive line with great success. And McCoy, because of his awareness, and I think he is one of the smartest centers in the league too. Because of McCoy's awareness, he knows who to pick up in the double teams, and that's how a lot of the sacks and the pressures have come on the inside. It just wasn't straight up blown blocking assignments; it was blown double team adjustments and things like that. And Eric has as good a recognition as any offensive lineman in football as far as picking up what the defense, the defensive pressure packages and rush packages. And since he's been out, we've also noticed the Saints have a lot less success running on the edge, something where they just gored the Panthers in the season opener and the Cowboys in the second week. And you mentioned McCoy's ability to pull. That's only part of it, though. One of the reasons why Kamara in particular hasn't been effective on off tackle plays is opponents have been able to string it out, without much fear of a cutback lane from Kamara. And Alvin is still a fantastic cutback runner, but if there's not a lane there, then it doesn't matter if you got Barry Sanders as running the football, who in my opinion is the best cutback runner we've ever seen. Doesn't matter who you have. If there's no lane there, you ain't getting yardage. And as a result, we're seeing Kamara, Mims, even Taysom having to bounce outside or just kind of put their head down and bull forward for as much minuscule yardage. Cesar Ruiz, Nick Saldiveri, who we believe is starting, for the injured Lucas Patrick today, they certainly have to do a better job on the backside. There's no question about it. But when you have Eric McCoy there, you could be pretty confident that there's going to be some sort of crease if Alvin can't get directly off tackle or all the way to the outside. So at the very least, I expect improved pass protection when Cleveland brings extra rushers on the inside like previous opponents have. And I expect a higher average per carry from both Alvin and Taysom this afternoon.
Let's flip it to the Cleveland side of the offense. We've talked about Jameis Winston, what we can expect from Jameis Winston. Love or hate Jameis Winston as a football player, you do know how dangerous he is for his own team and the team he's also playing against. He's dangerous both ways. Bob already alluded to that. This is a Cleveland team that is slowly getting their superstar running back kind of reacclimated to the offense after coming off of a gruesome injury early in the year last year, and that's Nick Chubb. I said on Wednesday that if there was a game for Nick Chubb to remind people how good he is in the NFL, like this is the game to do it, because the Saints' rush defense has been putrid for a majority of the season. And I say, you know what? I take that back. All of this season, because you couldn't really get a read on them the first 2 weeks because they were up by so much in those games. Teams couldn't run the football. With that said, Nick Chubb is one of those guys where he's been so good for so long, but he's been in Cleveland. And it probably hasn't got the national publicity that he probably deserves as one of the better running backs in the league when he's healthy. Now, coming off an injury like he is, yes, modern medicine is a lot different than it was 20 years ago. And dudes come back from injuries like that and are back to their superstar selves a year later. Adrian Peterson's one of the best examples of that, right? His 2012 MVP season, like unreal coming off of an injury. I'm not saying Nick Chubb's necessarily going to do that to the Saints today, but he has the capability to break off monster plays. He's a big, physical, bulky runner with quick bursts of speed. And if you've never watched him play, maybe not as angry of a runner as Mark Ingram. I don't know if there's really a lot of guys you could say is a more angry runner than Mark Ingram, but big, will just plow over defenders, but also has unbelievable breakaway speed.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the Saints, and you mentioned the Saints defense has got to focus on the run when we were talking about Jameis Winston, but if they don't contain Chubb early, it's going to be a long day for that defense because it's really going to open up Jameis for what I think Jameis is best at, and that's play action down the field. How do you stop, even coming off an injury, a guy who may be on a snap count? How do you stop or contain a guy like Nick Chubb?
Well, and I'm like you. I've always loved Nick Chubb. Even back, clear back to his collegiate days at Georgia. But I love Cleveland's running back room in general because if it's not Chubb, Jerome Ford is a nice little back. He actually leads the Browns in rushing. And Donta Freeman, who we've seen bulldoze Saints defenders plenty of times in the past. He's your short yardage back, but he's also capable of carrying the load. Again, Cleveland is going to need to run the ball. Now they have the third fewest rushing attempts in the NFL, but they've been behind a lot. So I suspect that that's the reason why. All the more reason for the Browns to want to establish the run early and often today. If you're the Saints, and I know what we know about Jameis is that he is capable of ripping your defense apart, but you still have to challenge Jameis Winston and those receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, who I love at tight end. You have to challenge them a little bit and do it with a straight up passing attack rather than play action with Jameis, as you mentioned. To do so, you're probably going to have to drop an extra defender into the box. And that extra defender has to be one that can tackle. So it's not Tyrann Mathieu. In actuality, Tyrann Mathieu's best attribute will be matching wits up against Jameis Winston in coverage today. So if Joe Woods, the defensive coordinator now, drops Tyrann Mathieu in the box ever today, he should be fired before the end of the game. But Pete Werner, who's fantastic against the run. I'm highly critical of Werner's ability in space and in coverage, but I love him as a run defender. And Demario Davis, I thought last week played a fantastic game against Atlanta. Bijan Robinson had a good day rushing, but Demario Davis made a lot of stops for at or around the line of scrimmage that was kind of reminiscent of the Demario Davis we've seen through most of his Saints career. So those two guys, Warner and Davis, they're going to have to see the gaps in Cleveland's blocking and be decisive when shooting those gaps to make plays on Chubb, Freeman, and Ford in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage. Now, that also means for that to happen and to keep blockers off Warner and Davis as much as possible, the New Orleans defensive line has to win their matchups up front. Obviously, we know that Jameis will throw the ball to you or take a lot of sacks by holding on to the ball too long. So you need to pressure the Browns backfield in that capacity, but you also need to get penetration against the run. Nathan Shepard in particular, and I know everybody loves Kalen Saunders. He's such a personality. He's got that personality. He's got to make more plays on the football field. Brissy is a good pass rusher. We've seen him struggle against the run a little bit. You need interior penetration against this Browns team because Cleveland has a very good tackle that they're going to run to his side more often than not. Just like with Kamara, you have to take away those cutback lanes, especially with Chubb and Ford. String plays out. Let Davis, let Warner make the pursuit. Stay disciplined up front and stalemate, at the very least, stalemate your one-on-one matchups if you're the Saints defensive line.
And finally, I'll ask you this. We talked about the Saints offense. We talked about where is the production going to come from, because it's really Alvin Kamara. We talked about MVS. Obviously, we're counting on him at least in the first quarter for our underdog pick'em. But what are some weaknesses of this Cleveland defense? I mean, this is a Cleveland team that has struggled this year, right? They're sitting at 2-7, but they come in as favorites, betting favorites today, going into the Superdome. Bob, what are some things the Saints offense can exploit with this Browns defense?
I see a vulnerable Cleveland linebacking core. Myles Garrett is still an all-world pass rusher up front at defensive end, but he's not the only one. Cleveland has some talent, has some muscle in the trenches, and I love the Browns secondary too, especially their cornerback unit. Not a favorable matchup for the Saints. When you're down your top three receivers and you're going up against Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, and Greg Newsome. But I see some vulnerability in the Browns linebacking core. Especially athletically and sideline to sideline. We know Taysom Hill is like a bull in a china shop as a runner, but Taysom has underrated burst, underrated speed that not nearly enough of the national analysts talk about. And we know about how dynamic Alvin Kamara is. I think those two guys, and for that matter, Jordan Mims too, they have a distinct athletic advantage over the Browns linebacking core. We mentioned running off tackle. This is what the Saints want to do anyway, especially early in the games. So I think that you'll be able to beat the Browns linebackers to the edge. I know that Kamara in particular is going to have a massive advantage as a receiver in open space against these Browns linebackers. So if I'm designing the game plan, I mentioned attacking off tackle and the reason why. I'm also getting Kamara and Jordan Mims too involved early, to try to get matchups against as receivers, to try to get matchups against those Cleveland linebackers. Who is Cleveland going to use to cover Juwan Johnson? We know, Johnson's inconsistencies drive both you and I up the wall, but we know that he has the ability of a playmaker too. If Cleveland tries to cover Juwan with a linebacker, this could be a big game for Juwan Johnson. Again, I'm finding any and every way possible to attack that Browns linebacking core. That also, we mentioned play action before and how the Browns are vulnerable. That's why. It's because of the speed of their linebacking core and some of the awareness issues that they have.
Yeah, Juwan's one of those guys that we both love the potential and we love the positive things that we see out of Juwan. But for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, we're seeing more negative than positive when it comes to Juwan Johnson, which potential is the scariest word in sports for a reason. But we were really hoping Juwan would kind of step up and be that guy, that tight end that the Saints have really been looking for since Jimmy Graham's departure and outside of the 1 year of Benjamin Watson, which is one of my favorite random Saints player years, right? Is the 1 year of Ben Watson where you could really make the argument he could have been a Pro Bowl alternate that year. All right, Bob, let's get to some score predictions and let people get on their way. Bob, I'm a little surprised the Saints come in as underdogs at home, right? Against a team that has less wins. I mean, given they've had their bye week, but equally poor football team. Not as injury riddled as the Saints, given I don't know if there's another team in the league that's as injury riddled as the Saints are. But I'm a little surprised they're underdogs. They are putting Jari Evans into the Hall of Fame today? Ring of Honor?
Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor today. which hopefully he gets the applause and celebration that he deserves. A future Hall of Famer, in my book. There's going to be a lot of energy, especially coming in to the second week of the Rizzy era. I just felt like I was like 12 years old, like saying that. That's not how I intended it. But I felt about 12 years old. But no, I think there's going to be a lot of energy in the building. Obviously, Jameis coming back. I think there's going to be a little something there from Who Dat Nation as well, to try to frustrate and disrupt Jameis. I like the Saints in this one, which is the first time I've said that in a couple weeks. I like the potential, which I just said is the scariest word out there. I like the potential for victory. The over-under for points is like 44.5. I think that's pretty on par. I don't see this game getting super crazy, but I could see both teams getting in the 20s. So I'm actually going to go under that over-under for points spread at 44.5. I'm going to take the Saints 24-20 over the Cleveland Browns. I think that Eric McCoy gives that offense just a little bit more pop. And because of his presence, I think he could probably get the Saints another 3 points or so. So I'll take the Saints in this one. But I think Jameis goes over 300 yards. I do think Jameis throws 2 scores. Might be 3 interceptions, but at least 2 scores.
Right. Yeah, well, that's the full Jameis experience. You mentioned the word energy. And that's what I'm going to be watching very closely today. The Saints played with a lot of intensity and a lot of energy last week. We expected them to do so. Rizzy is a very energetic coach. We talked about, as we did on our Bayou Blitz telecast on Wednesday, we talked about, typically a team, an NFL team, when they make a midseason coaching change, that team plays with a higher energy level for a week or two. So, can the Saints sustain the intensity level, that they showed last week? I'm going to be watching that very closely. If Rizzy wins, if the Saints win, Rizzy actually, establishes history for the New Orleans franchise. There have been 5 other interim coaches, not counting Darren, in team history. 3 of a result of firing, 2 as a result of resignation. Each of those 5 coaches, interim coaches, won 1 game. 1. That's it. They were a combined 5-26. So again, like we talked about, after that first week or two, typically a team will kind of level off and revert back to being the team that got their coach fired in the first place. So, that's something to watch from the Saints today. All 5 of the previous interim coaches in Saints history lost their second game, on the sidelines, being with their teams being outscored by an average of 33-17. I don't expect that kind of game today, mainly because the Cleveland Browns are not a very good football team.
That's true.
There's a reason why the over-under is what it is, because as bad as the Saints defense has been statistically in literally every category, the Browns offense has been equally bad statistically in every category. So, that, as odd as it is to say, that's the matchup to watch, not just because of Jameis Winston, but also whether the Saints can actually stop the run. Can the Saints get a turnover? Cleveland's defense is underachieved too. Not as bad as New Orleans, but the Browns defense is underachieved too. But I like the matchup, the play calling matchup that Clint Kubiak has on that side of the ball. And, we highlighted why Eric McCoy, Alvin Kamara, and wanting to use a play action attack. So I do think the Saints will be able to move the ball. Finishing might be a different story because, again, I have a lot of respect for this Cleveland defense. I'm like you. I expect a lower scoring game. Definitely under the 44 over under, that the national line has. But I expect a close game also. Would not surprise me. And I know that this will give us all an additional Ulster Saints fans. Would not surprise me at all if Jameis Winston had the ball in his hands with an opportunity to win the game on the final drive of the fourth quarter. But again, it's the Jameis experience, ladies and gentlemen. So this thing could go wildly in either direction. I am hesitantly going to go with the New Orleans Saints coming out of this one with a 22-19 win.
It's a weird score line. I like
Jameis is a weird player, so
I loved every moment of the Jameis experience. I would sign up for it again in a heartbeat.
Yes.
It's fun. And sometimes, especially when you're not a good football team, as long as it's fun, who cares? That's kind of where I'm at this year. Bob, where can everybody follow you and your work and catch up on some of those articles before the
well,
game?
First of all, anybody that's watching live in particular, thank you for watching the Week 11 Bayou Blitz pregame show. And Brendan and I plan on recording a post-game show for you available to watch or listen to on Monday morning. In the meantime, folks, you can follow me, Bob Rose, over on Facebook, at BobbyR2613 on the X Twitter. And make sure, if you guys have missed our Bayou Blitz weekly broadcast the last couple of weeks, you missed some good content. Brandon and I had Lance Moore on this past week. We had Courtney Roby on the week before. We had Tyrone Hughes the week before that. Delvin Bro the couple of weeks before that. Couple reasons why we have these Saints greats on. One is they are friends of ours and friends of the show, therefore Bayou Blitz family. But they are also part of the original Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise. This cruise is going to be March 27th through the 31st. There are still spots open, but they're going fast. So contact Shireen DeWalt through the Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise Facebook page or the Seven Seas Travel Agency, either for promotion opportunities, if you have a brand you want to promote, to donate, because this money goes to the American Cancer Society, or of course to get a cabin on the boat yourself. We are going to continue to be proud promoters of the Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise, and you can continue to catch our shows and our promotion as such through not only being a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, but any of our affiliated groups, Who Dat Domination, Who Dat Nation, or Under the Dome.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Make sure you check the podcast out on Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod. You have about 40 minutes, guys. I did drop our Pick'em entry for Underdog. So if you guys want to tail, go ahead and do that. Hopefully, we're talking in the post-game show about winning a little bit of money because it's been more than a couple weeks since we've. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not gonna confirm or deny rumors that I'm the next aging athlete that Jake Paul is gonna fight, but
you might need to.
If I am, folks, I need to get better diamond crusted trunks than what Paul was wearing against Mike Tyson. And to do that, we need your help and we need your luck on underdog.com.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it must be nice was like 18 minutes in the ring for Tyson, like $20 million or something like that. Like it must be nice. It must be nice. I'll do something for 18 minutes for $20 million. There's a long list of things that I'd be willing to do.
Yeah.
But I digress. That might need to stay over on Bob jokes about the OnlyFans Bayou Blitz page. So I'll leave that to Bob. I think that's on my list of no's. But Bob, I can't speak for you. And for the sake of keeping this PG, we'll just ish. That's fair. I think for us, it's not quite PG-13. It's somewhere between PG-13 and an R-rated. So maybe like a PG-17, PG-16. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Guys, we're good at doing this, so we'll invent our own category. We'll go RPG.
RPG? Role play game?
Okay, we've crossed that line again.
I was like, wait a minute. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the Saints and Browns at 1 o'clock. We will be back for a post-game show. Until then, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. We'll see you for the post-game on Monday morning. Find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you then. Who dat?